All of our productions at GCTV are brought to you in part by People's United Bank, 45 Federal Street in Greenfield. Call them at 774-3713 or visit them online at peoples.com. C&S Wholesale Grocers is hiring in Hatfield and Brattleboro. Go to weselectthebest.com or click on the link at gctv.org for employment opportunities. The Arbors at Greenfield, assisted living community providing a unique balance of independence and personal care that offers residents and families the most precious gift of all, peace of mind. The Hammond Family. The Hammond Family are longtime supporters of Greenfield Community Television. New Fortune Chinese Restaurant on the Mohawk Trail in Greenfield. Visit them online at newfortunema.com and check them out on Facebook. Greenfield Community College, providing access and excellence in higher education in the Pioneer Valley. gcc.mass.edu. Greenfield Savings Bank. Visit them at 400 Main Street in Greenfield, call them at 774-3191, or go online to greenfieldsavings.com. Franklin Community Co-op. Visit them at 144 Main Street in Greenfield or go online to franklincommunity.coop. Bay State Health, providing the care you and your family need when you need it close to home. Visit them online at baystatehealth.org. Thank you to our sponsors for supporting all the productions at Greenfield Community Television.
So I called the library yesterday when I saw that the temperature was supposed to be minus 21 wind chill, and I said, should we have this? And somebody at the desk said, come on, this is Greenfield. They're hardy here in Greenfield. I can see this. I can see this. So thank you all for coming out on this coldest night of the year for this. So far, yeah. Thanks. So, what's that?
There've only been six or seven.
6 nights
this year.
Well, my name is Susanna Crolius, and I live in Montague, so I'm a Franklin County person. My history has been as a pastor in the United Church of Christ denomination, which I am not anymore. I mean, I'm still, but I have taken on a new project called Art and Soul, grant-funded project, community arts initiative, that combines the arts and spirituality and community building and social justice. And what I'm really interested in is how we creatively make space to have conversations about the things that matter most to us in our human condition. So Art and Soul has been in existence for a year, and the Forgiveness Project is our first sort of big initiative, I could not have imagined what the Forgiveness Project, it's been going for 6 months now, started at the Forbes Library in June. It's been traveling around to festivals and fairs. I was at First Night. I had a booth at First Night. Smith College campus, healing arts workshops using the arts to explore forgiveness. It's a year-long creative, multi-venue, multi-town conversation on. I'm going to use the word exploration on forgiveness. But before I go further, I do want to thank the Greenfield Library. Lisa and the staff have been awesome. Just awesome. And then I also, while I thank you for coming out tonight, I also want to acknowledge that you all are here you come out for this particular subject for a reason. And I want you to know that as we have this conversation tonight, while while we are talking, I'm also holding this subject. We're going to say a little bit more about forgiveness and talk a little bit more about that. But this is what I'm finding out is this is a weighty topic. And so I want you to know that I thank you for coming, not only out in the cold, but for coming to be open to this complex subject. So before I start, do you all have a card in front of you that says forgiveness is? Let me introduce one. And while I'm handing that out, there's one other person I want to introduce. Melissa, would you want to say a few words?
Hi, I'm Melissa Redwin. Feels great to be here. I've been working with Susanna last fall and this winter on the Forgiveness Project. I'm a performing artist and teaching artist at Enchanted Circle Theater. I also run a project called the Survivor Theater Project. We do arts programming for survivors of sexual violence and social justice theater. And yeah, I live in Haydenville, and I'm a mom. It's nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Does everyone have a card that says forgiveness is on it?
No.
Nope. So, before we start this conversation, how this is going to go is we're going to just say a little bit. We're going to do some participative conversation. I'm going to say a little bit about the Forgiveness Project tonight because we're going to have a whole month of exploring this in several different ways. Tonight is not the denouement, it's just the beginning. And so this will be just the beginning conversation. And I can tell you about the other events that will be happening. But I want you to just take a few minutes, if you're willing, and if you don't want to do this, this is fine also, to jot down your initial words, thoughts, feelings when you hear the word forgiveness. I've got some pencils and pens if you need them. Don't think too hard about this. Just what comes up for you.
I have a pencil.
Yes. When you hear the word forgiveness.
For that.
Sure. You get your color. You get your choice of color. And then you're going to grab my bag of pens and grab my bag of markers instead.
I want to be willing to forgive. But I do not dare ask for the will to forgive, in case you give it to me. I'm not yet ready for my heart to soften. I'm not yet ready to be vulnerable again, not yet ready to see that there is humanity in my tormentor's eyes, or that the one who hurt me may also have cried. I'm not yet ready for the journey. I'm not yet interested in the path. I am at the prayer before the prayer of forgiveness. Grant me the will to want to forgive. Grant it to me, not yet, but soon. Can I even form the words, forgive me? Dare I even look? Do I dare see the hurt that I have caused? I can glimpse all the shattered pieces of that fragile thing, that soul trying to rise on the broken wings of hope, but only out of the corner of my eye. I am afraid of it. And if I am afraid to see, how can I not be afraid to say, forgive me? Is there a place where we can meet? You and me, the place in the middle, the no man's land, where we straddle the lines, where you are right and I am right too, and both of us are wrong and wronged. Can we meet there and look for the place where the path begins, the path that ends when we forgive? I will forgive you. The words are so small, but there's a universe hidden in them. When I forgive you, you will no longer define me. I do count. I do matter. I am bigger than the image you have of me. I am stronger, I am more beautiful, and I am infinitely more precious than you thought me. When I forgive you, my forgiveness becomes a gift that gives itself to me. I am hurt. I am betrayed. I am in pain and grief. I have been treated unfairly. I am feeling ashamed. I am angry that this has been done to me. I am sad and I am lost. I may never forget what you have done to me. But I will forgive. I will do everything in my power to not let you harm me again. I will not retaliate against you or against myself.
So in those readings from Desmond Tutu's book, there is a world of questions and thoughts. And the Forgiveness Project is about the questions. It's not about the answers. It's about the exploration of this thing called forgiveness. Is there anybody who's willing to share, it's okay if you're not, what they wrote on the card that says forgiveness is? Is there anyone willing to share? There's no right or wrong answer here. Right behind you. Yes.
Yeah. So, it's an intimate friendship.
Forgiveness is an intimate friendship.
Yes. I can expand, but
Well, do you want to expand?
sure. Yes, I would. So, it's the same, a similar process to parenting, where you have something that wells up inside you, and it's like this little child. And you have to give attention to this thing because it's your responsibility. So it affects an attention to this thing. Because, hey, look, there's a baby. And now you got to be honest, like, that's my baby. It involves accountability. I realize that I'm accountable for how I feel and perceive others and perceive myself. And it also involves being open to accepting that and accepting whatever it is. And instead of taking a blow that I either give myself or I seemingly receive from another, I work with it. And I work with that energy to produce something that I can essentially send out. And in love, you end up giving something so much energy and attention, and eventually the end stage of love is letting go. So, embracing and letting go.
Thank you.
Forgiveness is a decision to let go of analyzing, blaming, crucifying another person for their choices. It's putting an end to powerlessness, victimhood, shame, and self-incrimination. It is grace, receiving a blessing, and it's becoming a blessing to another.
Is everyone here okay?
No. No.
No? May I ask you to just say it one more time, a little louder?
Forgiveness is a decision to let go of analyzing, blaming, crucifying another person for their choices. It's putting an end to powerlessness, victimhood, shame, and self-incrimination. Forgiveness is receiving the blessing of grace and becoming a blessing to another.
Thank you. Anyone else want to share?
Well, I'll share. I think that Sandra covered most of it, but
Speak up just.
accepting what happened without blame, placing no blame regardless. And I said forgiveness is hard to do in some cases because I feel justified in staying angry. Sure.
Forgiveness is a way to let go of the wish for revenge. Forgiveness is a gift you can give yourself. Forgiveness is a process that may take many stages.
I think forgiveness is recognizing human flaws and granting them peace.
And what?
Granting them peace.
Being ready to let go of hurt or pain, understanding we all can cause hurt and pain, living as Jesus suggests, and love becoming more powerful than hate. I
kind of concur with that. I would not, it seems to be like one of the oldest concepts written down by man, kind of like what the Bible kind of says. So Jesus, basically, that was one of his primary things that he said, was that you were supposed to forgive anybody. Forgive. It was one of the main concepts of almost the first written word that was the concept of it, as far as I'm concerned.
Letting go, opening my heart, letting everything in and out, release, unburdening, unweighting, lightening, warmth, extending, including, remembering and unremembering, not holding on to.
Short and sweet. Well, maybe not sweet. Forgiveness is hard, admirable, easy to avoid, and crucial.
All right, we can go home.
Yes. I'll add to things that haven't been said. Broadening how I see and allowing the other to be who they are now and withdrawing my projections.
And I'll add, forgiveness is difficult, forgiveness is dangerous to the little story, forgiveness is necessary, annealing, transformational, the next step, the next step.
I feel like there's this beautiful poem that's being written. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I wrote a few things, but the one that's different than...
A little louder.
I wrote a few things down, but the one piece that's a little bit different is I said focusing on relationships, not the deeds or actions.
So people say, so where did you get the idea for the Forgiveness Project? So here it was, I thought, I had been a pastor for 15 years. And the things that people brought into my office for pastoral counseling and the suffering that I saw had to do largely with people's struggles to forgive themselves. They needed forgiveness from somebody. They needed somebody to forgive them. That there was just in 15 years of ministry, I felt that it was so clear that the largest amount of human suffering with the people that I was encountering had to do in some way around holding on and how that holding on was causing suffering. So when I got the grant to create Art and Soul, I thought, oh, well, forgiveness. I've spoken that word for 15 years, but I don't really know what that word means. Truth is, I really don't know what that word means. And I'd like to explore what that word means. Now, of course, I was thinking that it had to do with other people, what I had experienced as a pastor. And so 6 months into the Forgiveness Project, I am still learning what that little word forgiveness means, and it is not a little word. It is such a not a little word. And I'll tell you, I realized, so there's a professor at Boston University by the name of Charles Griswold, philosophy professor, who wrote an article for the New York Times 4 years ago maybe on forgiveness. And what struck me was that after this article, which was really about a page and a half, just sort of a page and a half, it wasn't a very long article, there were 428 28 responses online to this little article about forgiveness. So this little word is clearly not a little word at all, and people have lots and lots and lots that they want and need to say about it. I copy all 428 responses that people have to say here. And so as I was thinking, okay, I'll explore forgiveness, lo and behold, Bishop Desmond Tutu released a book last April called The Book of Forgiving. It was just fortuitous. I didn't know that he was releasing this book, but it's an amazing book. It's an amazing book. If anybody can speak with credibility about forgiveness and the struggle for forgiveness, Desmond Tutu certainly can do that. So part of what we're doing this month is encouraging you to read this book. People who have done it, as I say, the Forgiveness Project has been in many venues now for 6 months. People say this book has changed their lives, and they want other people to read it. It's really powerful. The library has many copies of it. And so I wanted to share with you what I'm learning about forgiveness so far, because we're still just 6 months into it. You can hear that there are many definitions of what forgiveness is, as you heard people speak around the room. And yet in our culture, we tend to box it into this little box. One of the things I've encountered is that people will say, so it's really a religious concept. Well, it certainly is parts central to certain religions. It's certainly central to my religion. It's central to, if you look at any religion, the idea of how we are in relationship with each other and being in harmonious and faithful and peaceful relationship with each other is at the core of all religions. I hadn't anticipated. I sort of thought, okay, it's a sort of an innocuous word. And what I kept bumping up against was how triggering it was on so many levels for people. Either it brought this fear that it was about religion, or people would come to the forgiveness booth that I had and they would see the word forgiveness and they'd start to cry because it would just well up something for them. I would watch people look at the sign about the forgiveness booth and walk way around that booth. Way around that booth. And so this little word, forgiveness, it's a triggering word. It's a powerful word. And yet what I'm finding is people are so eager to talk about it. Look, I mean, it's supposed to be 21 below, and there are 30 people in this room tonight. And what I'm finding out is that there are so few places besides the therapist's office and the pastor's office where you talk safely together, how we talk safely together about how we want to be in relationship with one another. So I'm going to stop here for just any sort of thoughts or questions so far.
I'm not very religious, but it has to be like, confession was supposed to be a way where you could actually, say if you did something really terrible, or if you felt bad about yourself, the pastor was supposed to kind of say it was okay, to basically get it off your chest, and kind of speak your mind. That was a closed, confidential space, right?
Right.
So I'm hardly come from a religious background at all. But I always thought that was kind of an interesting way of talking about forgiving, right? That's what it was his intent.
Yeah, and confession has largely gone out the door. So again, where do we confess? Where do we unburden ourselves when we have done something wrong or when we are in pain from something that somebody has done to us? I mean, we are unburdening ourselves on the internet in inappropriate ways a lot, or on TV, but in terms of sort of safe places to talk about how is it that we want to be in relationship with each other? How is it? And the other interesting thing about this is that, do you know Ira Byock? He's a palliative care doctor who wrote a book called The Four Things, and he spent years and years and years working with people who are dying. And he said that there are, he has found that when people come to the end of their life, there are 4 things that people ultimately need to say that is about relationship with themselves and with their loved ones and with people in their community. Those 4 words are thank you, please forgive me, I forgive you, and goodbye. So the fact that 2 of those things have to do with forgiveness speaks so strongly to how universal this condition, I don't even know the right word, what forgiveness, this thing called forgiveness. But the interesting thing is that what I'm also finding out in doing this and in talking to people is that ultimately it isn't sort of about forgiveness. It isn't sort of forgiveness may happen. It may happen, but the process, it's really about a process of how you how you respond in a world where there is so much suffering, where there is so much cruelty, where there is so much pain, and how do you choose to live in that? And so I'm finding that while I started this out with the idea about forgiveness, the word healing is becoming the word that is surfacing. And again, healing, like forgiveness, I think are some of those words that in our culture we sort of tame. We want to heal. We sort of want to forgive. But what I'm finding out and listening to dozens and dozens of people is healing and forgiveness, as somebody said, several people said, this is hard work. And it doesn't happen instantly. And the question that is interesting to me is, so where does somebody find, how does somebody make the choice to decide to walk down the path of forgiveness? A lot of people don't. A lot of people don't. And so it's really about sort of what choice do you make about how do you want to heal or not, and what you do with this hurt that is a part of our human condition. And the other word that has come up in this exploration is the word dignity. I'm still exploring that, but I think when we are harmed, our dignity is assaulted. Dignity. And that's hard to recover from. And I just put that out there because it's an unfolding thought about dignity. That word seems to be coming up a lot in this exploration about forgiveness. Any thoughts?
I'm thinking about what I said about it being dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
because that word was like, cut me when I saw it. And then I modified it, actually, when I was speaking it, I modified it because I understood as I heard myself that why it's dangerous, and probably why I'm here through 30 below wind chill factor, whatever it is out there, is because I said it was dangerous to the little story.
Yeah.
And it is. We can't keep holding on to all the justifications and the righteousness and the separations and shit.
What you'll find in the Tutu book is that he calls us to, you're bringing us to that place of sort of rising. I mean, maybe you know this Rumi quote, and it goes something like, out beyond the idea of right doing and wrong doing, there is a field. I will meet you there. And I think so forgiveness may be that field. And maybe you'll get to the field. Sort of an invitation. You can go to the field, or you don't have to go to the field. But it's interesting that he titled the book of Forgiving. Because it is an active process of deciding whether you're going to sort of take the path to the field, where you're going to meet sort of something that is bigger than our stories that we tell ourselves. Our stories are really powerful. Our stories are really powerful. And I love, and so he calls us in this book to sort of imagining that there is this thing that our humanity is really wrapped up in each other's well-being, and that he really calls us to a place. He holds our own personal pains, which are very real, our own personal sufferings, but he also holds out this field where there is something beyond the pain. Am I making sense?
Mm-hmm. This is why I didn't read my definition. It felt incomplete. I wrote acknowledging hurt and wrong and letting go so that the relationship can flourish, which to me is like meeting in the field and going on with the relationship. That's optimal, but I think often it's not possible.
Absolutely.
That the forgiveness involves going on with your life, moving past and out of that relationship, or wishing them well and moving on. But the relationship itself is not possible.
And he'll say that forgiveness, and this is arguable, and this is why I invite us all to an exploration about this for a month. He says forgiveness is ultimately even not about the other person. It's really not about the other person. It really is about how you choose to live in relationship to the world. I find that as one who has been wronged, and one who tends to carry a lot of hurt in my life, boy, I find that hard. Man, it means you mean it's me? I have to do this? I really have to look at this grief and this pain. Really? Yeah. And I think that that's the other reason that forgiveness, why we try to minimize it, as I said, because it involves staring grief and pain and uncertainty and confusion and suffering in the face. And it's just very, 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 who wants to do that? Who wants to do that?
I said shit, and I meant it. There's a saying about manure for the fields of Bodhi, where compassion forgives. fertilizing.
We, in our culture, we don't like to get messy. We like things kind of neat. And that's why this is so hard, because it's dung. It is.
Not done.
No, not dung. Dung. What's going to come out from all of this? So I didn't even know, and I still don't really know what's going to come out of this, except that I'm having amazing conversations with people, and people are sharing stories with me, with each other. The idea is that all these things that are being collected, conversations are being collected, cards are being collected, emails, forgiveness journals, all these things are being collected. And that the Enchanted Circle Theater is going to write a performance piece based on everything that is shared at the end of this project. And so that's sort of that's one of the goals of the Forgiveness Project. But I'm also realizing that I've touched on something that has just, I could not have anticipated how this subject has touched people's lives is so important in people's lives. I could not have imagined that in the beginning of this. And you know this, Carmela. I actually wrote a play about forgiveness and did similar things in terms of writing, taking interviews, and you know how deep this subject is.
I wanted to share one thing from my research that came to mind in this conversation, which was, you may remember the murders in Nickel Mines, Pennsylvania, about 10, 15 years ago, of the Amish schoolgirls who were gunned down in the school. And one of the books I drew on for my work was, I forget what the name of it was, but it was written by a couple of journalists who went and talked to the families and the people involved. And one of the moms of one of the girls who died said, "I forgive him. It doesn't mean I've forgotten what he did, but I forgive him. But I have to forgive him every day, sometimes several times a day." And that just really, it came to mind with all this. It's like it's not an ending. And even when you get into the field, sometimes you go back out and come back in again. And for this woman, it was a daily thing of trying to get to that field and trying again to forgive the man who murdered her daughter.
How did you get a grant to do the project in the first place?
Through the Community Foundation of Western Mass.
You actually came up with an idea and
I submitted a
to them?
grant proposal to them. Yeah, as I say, this is just the first year project, and we'll be doing many other things. But right now we're focusing on this. I sort of thought this was going to be something that was going to take, a couple hours a week, the Forgiveness Project, and I'm working 30 hours a week on it, because it's just, people are calling, they want to have, me come to their group and work with their, their group on forgiveness. So it's just, it's been amazing. So change the mood just a little. To sort of go back to the book, we've sort of brought up, surfaced a lot of stuff, and sort of go back to that place of Desmond Tutu's wisdom.
You have stood at this junction before. You will stand at this junction again. And if you pause and ask yourself which way to turn, you can turn away from your own sadness. You can run the race named revenge. You will run that tired track again and again. Or you can admit your own pain and walk the path that ends. I can show you where hope and wholeness make their homes. This is the path that leads to freedom, my friend. But you can't push past your anguish on your way there. To find the path of peace, you will have to meet your pain and speak its name. To whom shall I tell my story? Who will hear my truth? Who can open the space that my words want to fill? Who will hold open the space for words that tumble out in fast, cutting shards, and words that stumble hesitantly into the world, unsure of their welcome? Can you hold open that space for me? Can you keep your questions and suggestions and judgments at bay? Can you wait with me for the truths that stay hidden behind my sadness, my fear, my forgetting, and my pain? Can you just hold open a space for me to tell my story? I am sorry. How many deaths have those words died? They were stuck in my throat. They melted on my tongue. They suffocated before they met the air. I am sorry. The words crouch on my heart and they weigh a ton. Can I not just get on with it? Say I'm sorry and be done? I am sorry. And I'm not done. I am sorry for the hurt I caused, for the doubts I inspired, for the sadness you held, for the anger, despair, suffering, and grief you endured. I am sorry. There is no currency with which I can repay you for your tears, but I can make amends. And I do mean it when I say, I am sorry. The deed I have done fills me with shame and pain. I cannot make myself whole again. I cannot forgive myself. If my tender heart is truly there for you, it must be tender for me too. Soft and yielding, kind and forgiving. I must allow myself to come face to face with my own humanity. I can break free. We cannot begin again. We cannot make a new start as though the past has not passed. But we can plant something new in the burnt ground. You are a person who has hurt me. I'm a person who could hurt you. And knowing these truths, we make something new.
when I stand to survey this place, I can choose to invite you in to sow seeds for a new harvest. Or I can choose to let you go and let this field lie fallow. I hope you'll be inspired to read the book.
Speak a little louder, Susanna, if you can.
I'm hoping you will be inspired to read Desmond Tutu's book. It's really very, very, very beautiful. And I guess I want to ask, because this is an exploration on the subject of forgiveness, I'm really curious what questions you have about this thing, this process, this thing called forgiveness. What questions, because we're going to be through different ways exploring all of what is raised in the next month, and we're going to convene at the end of the month with a final conversation about different about forgiveness in what you found in the book, if you choose to read the book, and in other ways as you begin to think more about forgiveness. What questions do you have? Are there questions that you have about this thing called forgiveness?
Thinking about forgiveness as a kind of transaction, what is given up and what is gained?
Interesting. I'm going to leave these as open-ended questions. Questions?
I had a question, and interestingly enough, when I started reading the book, right away I felt like they answered the question. But I'll just put it out there. The question was, can we forgive and still want justice?
Mm-hmm.
When someone has broken the law. That's been huge for me. And according to the book, it's possible.
One of the partners in this project teaches up at SIT, and she teaches a course on forgiveness, and she says that without a doubt the question that arises again and again and again and again is, forgiveness does not mean that you just let that there is no accountability, that justice, that as he says, that justice is very much a part of the process, but it may look different than what we think of it as. It's not as black and white, but that this idea of accountability, I have been wronged, and I want somebody to pay, because that's the only way I'm going to feel better. I was listening yesterday to the jury selection, the conversation about jury selection for the Boston bomber, and I kept thinking, okay, so if we put this young man to death, are we going to really feel better? I mean, does that balance the equation? And this idea of accountability is a big one. It's what people really wrestle with. Can I forgive and have somebody still be out there?
Especially when justice means that person's going to be punished.
Yeah.
That's where I was getting confused.
Yeah.
Knowing that by seeking justice, the person would have to be incarcerated and serve time. And was my motive to hurt him or to get justice?
It's hard to separate those two things very much. Thank you for that. I'm glad that question was, there was some light shed on that for you. What other questions do you have about this thing?
One behind you.
Yes.
How much of forgiveness do we start thinking involves someone else's permission?
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
I don't understand the question.
So, how many, if an issue seems to arise between, say, you and I, does forgiveness require, for me to feel that sensation of forgiveness and go through that alchemical process, does it involve me obtaining permission from you in some way for me to feel forgiven? Or is it really start up in here?
Or here.
Right.
Yeah. Wherever, I mean, wherever it needs to start. Whether it's here, whether it's here, whether it's here. Yeah, thank you. What other questions?
I think this has been alluded to in a way, but not really focused on. That is when the thing that needs to be forgiven for has not been done to us, but to somebody else. And I mean, you just talked about Johar, and that's one thing. And another piece of this is when it has resulted in death, so that the person who you might think needs to forgive the other person is no longer there. So we're, in a sense, doing it on behalf of somebody else. It's just, and that ties in with how this is connected to the whole society.
Absolutely.
It isn't just between one person and another. And when you're talking about justice, this is a place where this comes up. There were two incidents that I have been thinking about all evening. One happened in the 50s, I guess, in Philadelphia, where a Korean man who was here as a student went to the post office box that was right down the street from where I had lived. I wasn't living there anymore. And he was murdered by, I don't know, 3 or 4 black young men, boys. And his parents came across from Korea, and they forgave those boys and advocated for their help. And then there was another incident where my daughter was in school in New York City, and a young woman who was a friend of hers who was from China was killed by drunken drivers on Chinese New Year, and her parents came over from China and forgave those people who had caused that. Now, I don't know how much anguish or difficulty it was for them, but to me, to know that people can do that is very powerful in this whole picture.
Thank you.
And I hold it for myself.
Thank you.
I said a number of things, but anyway.
You brought up two, I think, very interesting things, that the Forgiveness Project is most certainly about our own personal wounds, but we don't live in a vacuum. We have neighbors, we have a community, we have a world. And Tutu says, look, face it, we are all brothers and sisters. We are all brothers and sisters. And what happens to me here has a ripple effect in China. Like, if we live in kinship with each other, when we live in relationship with each other, those ripples of relationship are huge. And so this idea of justice and this idea of forgiveness is not just a personal thing, but really as something that that has ripple effects out. And this question of, do we just, there's so much that's going on in the world, and how do we, is there an alternative, or is there something else other than just outrage and shaking our heads and living with sort of this overwhelming sense of despair? I mean, so it ripples out. And then the second thing you just said, which was beautiful, was part of this next, not this Saturday, the next Saturday, we're going to do an audio story fest of stories that come from different places. And they are stories about people's struggles with forgiveness. And some of them are, they have arrived at that place of being able to forgive from something really horrible. And so they do offer, we have models out there. We have models of people who have been able to do this. If we're looking, if we think it's just not possible, well, there are models out there of people who have suffered tremendous pain and have confronted the feelings and the grief and the shame and the anger and the outrage, and have shifted to another place. But as you said, they don't just stay in that place. They'll say, you'll hear these audio stories, they get out of that field sometimes and they have to take the path back into that field. So thank you for sort of widening the sense of humanity here. So let me just say a little bit about what's going to happen with this project. So one, read the book if you'd like. Number two, I am going to do this Saturday because I really believe that art heals, and that creativity heals, and that perhaps doing art making and creative activity touches something in us deeper than it gets us out of our heads and moves us into deep emotional places. I am going to do something on Saturday called, it comes from this book. We're going to be creating boxes of sorrow. He does a guided meditation about boxes of sorrow in here. And we'll be doing an art making exercise from 10 to 12:30. It might not be that long, but I wanted to give time because when we did this in our healing arts class recently, it took a long, people wanted to talk, it brought a lot up. So I'll provide the supplies and hope that you will come and explore your thoughts on forgiveness through making these boxes of sorrow, which are really a way to express, begin to shift some things around inside of us and begin to imagine letting go of some things. And then the following week is this audio story fest. Stories from NPR, from The Moth. There's something called the Forgiveness Project in the United Kingdom, which I didn't know about until after I started this. And they have stories, so I've been collecting stories and we'll be listening to stories and having a little discussion after that. And then the third week, there is, bringing it sort of globally, there is a very powerful film called The Imam and the Pastor. It's not a religious documentary at all. I need to say that, not a religious documentary. But it is about how two people who choose a different path can then not only transform themselves, but the world. And this is a true story about an imam and a pastor in Nigeria who hated each other. They tried to kill each other for years in their region, and then something happened, and they said, we're gonna stop this. And they now have this peacemaking institute where they travel around the world to places in I mean, it's amazing. It's an amazing story. And so that documentary will be the third the third Saturday, and then the final will be, we're calling a creative conversation. It'll be more sort of conversation, but I think that there will be a participative and sort of, and maybe a piece where we partner up with somebody and share a little bit more. And so I want to just say, part of the way that we're collecting material is I've come up with some questions about forgiveness. And some of you took some, and you're welcome to take some. I have more. I just put out a few there. I would love it if you would send those back to me. You can be anonymous about it. If I had had time, I would have stopped and gotten stamps, so you didn't have to go do stamps. But there are about 18 questions that have different aspects to forgiveness, and we'd love to have those, your thoughts on those. That will help with this exploration. It'll also help when the performance piece is written. And then if you are interested in doing a 4-week healing arts class exploring forgiveness, I am looking to do one in Greenfield probably in February. There's a little piece of a flyer there. I don't have a place yet. I'm still in conversation. I'm still solidifying that. But I wanted to see if there's interest. The space is limited. Do you want to just say a piece about that?
Yeah.
Daria was a member of a healing arts class we did recently.
Yeah, I did a 4-week, well, I only did 3 of the 4 weeks, but Susanna with another person did a 4-week healing and arts class around forgiveness at the Montague Church in Montague. And it was really great, I have to say. It was really, really great. And I really believe that it was very tactile, very visual, fairly nonverbal, really, and powerful. It was wonderful. We did things like we made masks, you know, like mask on one side of the mask your emerging self, and on the other side your kind of shadow self. And then we walked on a labyrinth with those masks that was itself a powerful experience. We made collages. We made a box of sorrows. And it was great. And it was a small group, maybe 8 or something of that.
It kept small intentionally so community could be formed.
Yeah, which was great. And it created an incredible intimacy amongst us right away. And was, anyway, I recommend it.
Yeah, thank you. So there's a flyer there, and if you are interested, shoot me an email, because I need to know if there is enough interest to do the class, and how many there are. And I'm getting new business cards done, so I printed up just something that has my contact information on it, and a little bit about Art and Soul, and where you can go to the Art and Soul website if you want to learn more about that. And if you want to get emails about Art and Soul things that are happening, there's a sign-up list there. Before we do our closing, anything else?
What if people aren't like on email?
Oh my.
She forgives you.
Let me know and I'll work it out. I'll text, I'll call, I'll do what I need to do. I'll send a letter. I'll do whatever you need to do. Anything else that you want to share? Anything that's coming up for you? Or yes.
The question I wanted to share was whether or not true forgiveness can happen on a one-way street. And for me personally, if my anger or pain came from another person and that person said they were sorry, it would be a lot easier to forgive. But when that doesn't happen, can we forgive? And I'll leave it at that. But I just wanted to throw that up because that's probably why I'm here, to find that answer.
And if you have time, he has some interesting things to say about that. But ponder that question, because again, I think there's no right or wrong answer here around this. And ultimately, forgiveness is a decision and a choice. And it has many different layers of meaning and interpretation, and that is also a big question that people have asked. Like, okay, I need her to say I'm sorry, and she's never ever going to say I'm sorry.
Particularly when the action keeps happening.
Right.
How many times do you need to forgive?
You know, it relates to a question that I have too, which is what if the person who you feel should be forgiven doesn't realize they've done anything wrong, or doesn't, you know, it's like, what? What are you talking about, you know? That seems a little challenging.
Almost goes hand in hand.
Yeah.
One of the things that came up to me when you were talking about the question of dignity is that somehow I think that one of the reasons our dignity is hurt is because we realize we've been very much misunderstood in a way. And when you start exploring how to forgive someone, and sometimes that's true, they don't even know they hurt someone, it enlarges, it possibly could enlarge our understanding maybe of them too, so that whole idea of misunderstanding.
Do you know that the question card, without a doubt, when I put it out in places, the question card that always runs out is the one that says, the person who harmed you has a story. What do you suppose that story is? That is the one that flies out the door of all of them. So it's very interesting. I mean, it's, yeah, that idea of enlarging sort of the sense beyond our own world to, there is another, I mean, there's our story, there's the person's story, there's lots of stories that crash together. Yes.
Just to throw out the word capacity, because you were saying forgiveness is this thing, and some other words to try to describe it, but I'm viewing it as a capacity, a human capacity that, you know, we can find within ourselves. It's difficult to access, but I just like that word.
Thank you for that.
And also in talking about, you know, that a trauma might be done to someone else, it's not done to you. It seems like if a trauma is done to anyone else, it is also done to you, because you are experiencing it vicariously. It's bringing something extraordinarily violent or traumatic into your own life. So that there's really, as I think you touched upon, no real difference, you know, between it happening to someone else or to yourself, ultimately.
It really challenges us to understand what being human really means.
There's a question over there.
Oh, she's had, yours and then yours.
I guess mine's related to recent things, but it addresses like unequal power. So it would be something ongoing with unequal power. And I said forgiveness is not feeling or acting in a predator-prey type of relationship anymore.
That question of how are we to be in relationship with one another. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Just thinking about what Marion was saying, that when it happens to you, it happens, or to someone else, it also happens to you. And I'm thinking about the question of what is the other person's story. And it reminds me of when the Iraq War started, and Saddam Hussein was hated worldwide. And Fred Rogers got on television and said, I'm praying for him. He had a horrible childhood. Do you know this about him and this about him? And that he could sit there when everybody in the country was just spewing hatred and say, yeah, but, you know, this guy's a victim doing something. It's just, and to try and remember that under those kinds of circumstances is so hard.
It takes the word compassion with the small c and forces us to, again, think about that humanity, sort of how big and how connected is our world and our hearts. It's challenging stuff. It's really challenging stuff. Yeah. Anything else?
I was wondering if there was a general consensus that maybe forgiving gets harder as you age.
Interesting question. Interesting question. Do you want to add something to that, or just keep that as an open-ended question?
Well, I mean, you hear the scenario of the bitter old person. They just got bitter and isolated, or they became isolated from everyone they love. And I don't know. I just saw that connection. I was just wondering, if there was a consensus about that. You're the expert.
Oh, the thing I know nothing about forgiveness, which is
how do you forgive?
So, if you have responses to any of these amazing questions, my email is there, my phone number is there. Keep the conversation going with me. Really, if you think about that and you just call, for those who don't have email, you can call me. And yeah, I mean, it's interesting. And it'll be interesting in a month from now when we've sort of pondered this, to sort of see if we've come to any other places. There was one more question and then we'll close.
Well, it's not really a question, but this puts me in mind of the work of Marshall Rosenberg and nonviolent communication. And I've used that a lot in dealing with interpersonal things that are not too heavy, but he also has a tremendous amount of work with dialoguing, role-playing, like if you were hurt by somebody who's passed on or doesn't want to deal with you, he has someone who knows the nonviolent communication way of doing it, take that person's part or play you, and you play that other person, and then giving empathy. So that's hugely powerful. He has that, but they also, the thing that I like to do if I get hurt by, I feel hurt by something someone did or said, is to give myself empathy first and to like say, oh my God, that hurt, yikes, and just get, oh, I hate that person, whatever, just let it out, vent it, and it goes a bit. And then when I feel better, like, what do I think they might have been feeling when they did that? What do I think their needs were? And as soon as I can connect with those needs, those universal human needs, like maybe they were trying to just express themselves and be heard. Maybe they were feeling frustrated. It's not to justify, but it connects me with their universal need, and then I feel, oh, and then I want to rush into their arms and, just let it go. So I'll just say that for, and it's something that's in the valley around the North NBC is around, amongst other ways.
Yeah. Thank you.
Can I ask can I get a clarification
So
about
sorry, I thought
something?
I
Is this yours?
Please, I'm so sorry.
I just wanted to get a clarification because you said something about the next 4 Saturdays from 10 to 11:30, and then you said the next Saturday 10 to 12:30.
So everything else is 10 to 11:30, but this coming Saturday, because it's an art making project and because I know that it's going to well up stuff for people, I didn't want to just pack it into an hour and a half. Maybe we'll be done in an hour. Maybe we'll be done in an hour. That's going to be here. But I wanted to give a little breathing room for that.
Okay, thanks.
Was it Desmond Tutu calling?
It was.
It was. He's, okay.
So, excuse me, just really quickly,
Yes.
Susanna. I was really touched by the fact that not only Desmond Tutu, but his daughter wrote this book. It was a collaboration, and I was just so touched by them inviting us with them to heal not only ourselves, but the world through forgiveness.
Yes.
It was just so beautiful that he's doing it with his daughter.
Thank you. Thank you. So Melissa's going to send this out. One more, just one reading, not several, one.
If you are standing before me, beaten and bleeding. I cannot tell you to forgive. I cannot tell you to do anything, since you are the one who was beaten. If you have lost a loved one, I cannot tell you to forgive. You are the person who has lost a loved one. If your spouse betrayed you, if you were abused as a child, if you have endured any of the myriad of injuries humans inflict upon one another, I cannot tell you what to do. But I can tell you that it matters. Whether we love or we hate, whether we help or harm, it all matters.
All of our productions at GCTV are brought to you in part by People's United Bank, 45 Federal Street in Greenfield. Call them at 774-3713 or visit them online at peoples.com. C&S Wholesale Grocers is hiring in Hatfield and Brattleboro. Go to weselectthebest.com or click on the link at gctv.org for employment opportunities. The Arbors at Greenfield, assisted living community providing a unique balance of independence and personal care that offers residents and families the most precious gift of all, peace of mind. The Hammond Family. The Hammond Family are longtime supporters of Greenfield Community Television. New Fortune Chinese Restaurant on the Mohawk Trail in Greenfield. Visit them online at newfortunema.com and check them out on Facebook. Greenfield Community College, providing access and excellence in higher education in the Pioneer Valley. gcc.mass.edu. Greenfield Savings Bank. Visit them at 400 Main Street in Greenfield, call them at 774-3191, or go online to greenfieldsavings.com. Franklin Community Co-op. Visit them at 144 Main Street in Greenfield or go online to franklincommunity.coop. Bay State Health, providing the care you and your family need when you need it close to home. Visit them online at baystatehealth.org. Thank you to our sponsors for supporting all the productions at Greenfield Community Television.